guys. I am so happy to see all of you. It's gonna be a good day. Hi, Haley, Sean. Yes, Raptor lives. You missed him in the last stream. Well, not last stream, but the stream before last, Argent. But yes, hey Raptor, hey Faro, hey everybody. I hope everyone is doing well on this beautiful, beautiful Sunday afternoon. I am so happy to see everybody. I'm just trying to organize my windows here. Hi, Shadow Reaper. Yes, that stream when you were driving. Not that stream. Actually, no, it wasn't that stream. It was the one before that one I did. It was last week. Yes, I know. I miss Blue. I really need to... Sure, you can come in the call. Hold on. Let me grab some stuff. Hey, Roger. Hey, Queenie Halloweeny. Up. Shit is happening. Hold on. Shh.
Oh.
Hi. Hold on. Things are happening.
Let's see.
There we go. Alright.
What things were happening?
You were coming out of my USB speakers and not my actual, like, speakers in my headphones.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It was really weird. I was like, I've got to fix this right now. Turn you up a little bit here. It's kind of quiet right now. Alright, so yes, things are happening. Tomi was around and now she's like not fucking bitch. That's okay, she'll show up later. But yeah, hey Pit, how's it going? Yay. Yeah, it's just a lazy Sunday afternoon. I'm just gonna stream for maybe an hour and then I gotta deal with my animals and then my roommate is gonna be home. Gotta deal with my animals. And then it sounds so horrible when I say it that way. I love them. I love my children. But then after that, my roommate's gonna get home like around 8:30 and then we're gonna finish playing Ao Oni. We were playing it yesterday.
Oh, that's a fun game.
Yeah, it was really funny. We broke a lot of people's ears yesterday. Because they were just like, oh my god. I was like, rip headphones users. I'm sorry.
Queenie Halloweeny. Yes, it is. Hello.
Yes, it is. Let's see here. I'm gonna get all my stuff taken care of. Oh my god, she's talking to her father. Hold on. What else is new? Okay.
I have the perfect thing for this.
D96.
Wow, that was fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Yeah, don't do that. I stopped in. Jamie Nielsen. Hi. Hey, John Popa. Azul. Wow, so many people are in today. Although it's still kind of early. It's only 37. It'll probably climb higher here momentarily. But yeah, so I picked out a few stories. I picked out Last of the Sparks, Aokigahara Diary, The Strangers, and Satan's Fall.
Wow, I know none of those.
Right? These will be really fun. So I haven't read any of these either. So I think it'll be really neat. I'm excited. They're all really long too, so I'm wondering. Yeah, we might not get through all of them. Yeah, exactly. So we might get through a couple of long ones, and compared to all of the other ones, The Last of the Sparks is like supposedly a 6-minute read time. So I think we can probably get through that one first.
Okay.
The other ones. Okay, I shall link you. Here, 1 second.
What's that fucking smell? Yeah, smells like something's burning. Hold on.
Uh-oh. Please don't let it be. Sarah? I don't know. Hey, Captain of the Sails. Alright, bye, Pit. Have fun doing what you're gotta do.
My roommate's he's got oil on the stove.
Uh-oh. Is anything on
He's
fire?
gonna start. No. He's just gonna start cooking something. He just was heating the oil first.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I was just kind of like, do I need to
By the
be
way,
worried?
Nah. By the way, if I suddenly like shut up, then don't just like continue without me.
Mm-hmm.
Because my roommate may walk in
Ah,
and I don't want to be like voice acting creepypastas while he's here. It'd be
ah,
kinda annoying.
okay. That's fine. We all don't have concrete walls like I do.
Yeah.
Well, because it was funny because yesterday when I was doing all the screaming, me and my roommate, they were just like, oh my God, Eden, your neighbors might hate you. And I was like, no, our entire building's made of concrete. They don't hear anything I'm doing. The only way you hear
I mean, ours are
anything.
made of brick, but like I have a roommate.
Right.
I have sweet mates and roommate.
Anyway. Fun times. Okay, so that's the link to Last of the Sparks. Figured we'd start that one off first.
We got that up.
And I will link it in the chat. Hey, Red Fox. Hey, Jesse Blue. Oh, I'm sorry you have to go to work. Jack's like, go on without me. Alright, so that's the link to this story. If no one can hear me, that's when I just run out to my balcony and start screaming. Somebody will hear me then. Or I'll just call someone. I'll call Raptor and be like, hey, I need you to call the cops, like, in my local area. I am in danger.
I'll be like, yeah, I'll be right on that.
Wow!
How the fuck you expect me to call Mississippi cops?
I'm in Texas, and all you have to do is just be like, hey, my friend. All you have to do is say, hey, my friend is, like, in trouble. She lives in Texas, in the Panhandle. And then they'll, like, you know, you can redirect call the police. I've done it before.
Okay.
I've called 911 and be like, hey, my friend in New York is in danger. Because she called me freaking out. Because she thought her boyfriend was going to, like, you know, assault her.
Fuck. Okay, I did not know you could do that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep, they'll dispatch link you to wherever and send out a unit. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know when Creepy Jr. will accept me. I'll just have to wait. Like a patient little Eden.
Are you talking about other men while you're on call to me? How dare you?
Oh my goodness. I am so sorry. Look, okay? Everyone ships us. It's a thing. We're just gonna let it go and let it be its own thing for right now. Everyone, they're like, can we talk about studio salad right now? Like, no, let's not talk about that. Okay. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to set the mood. Let me grab some music here.
That's the right mood, right?
Yeah, that's totally the right mood. Alright, hold on, guys. I have a shit ton of music that I have specifically for these moments. Alright. Oh my god, stop. Would you stop it? Scrolling up. And there we go. Alright, do you want to read this one and then I can jump in, or?
Yeah, sure, I can try that.
Okay.
It's been a while. Okay. Back in February of 2008, I decided that I needed a change in my monotonous life. Whether that change would come in the form of a new job or a new toothbrush, I don't know. I was never the most adventurous person. I've found it difficult to veer away from my comfort zone, and the limit of my existence usually depended on which book I was reading at the time. It took a while to realize that my happiness often derived from the stories that my mind was living in. I was an avid bookworm, as miserable as a cynic. What the fuck is that word? I'm sorry. I'm gonna break the. What?
Synecdoche. Like anecdote, it's a synecdoche.
I don't think that's. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's a word.
That's weird. Okay, sure. Yeah, wow. I have the vocabulary of a 6th grader. Great.
It's fine.
Okay. Once I realized my true outlet, I immediately knew what I wanted. I purchased a small shop, quit my boring job, renovated the building, and transformed it into a bookstore. I'd never been happier. The next 2 years were the best of my life. The store had become a huge hit with the locals. My perspective on work had been completely altered, and I was feeling genuinely happy for the first time since my childhood. It was during the winter of 2010 that she walked into my store. She stepped inside out of the snow and approached me with a large bin bag. Fuck. Okay, that was weird. I'm sorry, I'm ruining the story, guys. Maybe Eden should read this one.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
My roommate keeps like walking in. Alright. Where am I? It was during the winter of 2010 that she walked into my store. She stepped inside out of the snow and approached me with a large bin bag. Etchings of age covered her pale face and hands. She must have been at least 80 years old. Slamming the bag on the counter, she simply said,
"These are for you."
I looked inside the bag to find a selection of some of the greatest novels ever written. Why? Do you want money for these or some kind of book trade? I asked confusingly.
No, they're yours to have. Take them.
She gave me a feeling of uneasiness. Her dirty gray fringe slightly concealed her face as a cold gaze met my vision. Are you sure you want me to have them? Wouldn't you rather sell them?
No, I have no use for them, nor for money.
Okay, thank you. What's your name?
Lucy.
She muttered her final words and left my store. I found it all too strange that somebody would give away such great books for nothing, but I suppose some people are just nice. I made my way home that night and took the books with me so that I can go through them. I piled them up on the table and was surprised to see that all of them were in fantastic condition. A couple of them seemed to be first editions, and others were versions that I'd never seen before. It took me a moment to realize, but the novels that I was looking at were not as I'd remembered them to be. The first book that I picked up was The Green Mile. On the front cover, there was an image of John Coffey smiling and holding two dead naked girls. I opened it up and flicked through the pages. In this version of the novel, he was in fact guilty of the rape and murder of both children. I made my way to the end of the book and read through the execution scene. All of the officers who had originally grown to love John Coffey in the original novel were now laughing uncontrollably and screaming racial taunts as he was being executed. My eyes had seen enough and my stomach had felt enough too. The next book I picked up was The Catcher in the Rye. The artwork upon the front page seemed to be of a dead body splattered on the street, drawn from an aerial view. I flicked through the book until I reached chapter 14. After Holden Caulfield speaks of messing with the idea of suicide, he suddenly breaks down in tears and jumps from the window, cracking his skull on the pavement below. The book abruptly ended after that. I then picked up Lord of the Flies. The defining image on this novel was of a large child with the face of a pig. He was covered in blood and surrounded by decaying corpses. After grazing through the pages, I reached a point of the story in which Piggy is described as being non-human, vicious, and a hungry animal. A chapter or so later, Jack insults Piggy, which leads to him losing his temper and ripping him apart. Piggy then proceeds to kill and eat the rest of the children. The remainder of the book was the same line repeated over and over. Piggy sat alone on the island, waiting for death. I read through the few books that were left in the pile, and they had all been changed in some sick way. The Great Gatsby, Wuthering Heights, To Kill a Mockingbird, Ulysses, every one of them. Just as I reached the bottom of the pile, I noticed the final book was one I'd never even heard of before. It was called Last of the Sparks. I found this slightly unnerving as I immediately paired it with my name, Aaron Sparks. Still, it was just a book. The front cover was of 6 gravestones with words too small to be read etched into the granite. I looked into the top corner of the book and noticed that there was a sell-by date on it. 6/4/2013. I nervously opened it up to the beginning of the story. Chapter 1. Alice Sparks. My stomach dropped as I read my mother's name upon the page. I felt dizzy and confused, and I anxiously made my way through the chapter. It seemed to detail a regular day in the life of the character until I reached the last page. Alice was crossing over the road when the heel of her shoe broke, causing her to fall. She didn't get to her feet fast enough, and a speeding driver struck her, puncturing both of her lungs. I felt sick to my stomach. I put the book down and got straight into bed, hoping for some sleep. I lay awake all night as countless questions ran through my mind. The only thought that managed to put me to sleep was, it's just a book. The next morning when I got to work, I was feeling worse for wear. It wasn't until lunchtime that I began to perk up and regain a bit of energy. Then the phone rang. I answered the call to my father crying on the other end. I immediately knew what happened. I closed the shop and ran to the hospital, but it was already too late. She was gone. Hit by a speeding driver, they said. I spent the next couple of weeks helping take care of my dad. Me, my brother, and my sisters stayed with him in turns and looked after him. We all looked after each other. It wasn't until a few months later that I picked up The Last of the Sparks. It had just scared me so much the last time. I opened it up to page 37, and there it was. Chapter 2, Patrick Sparks. The story was more of the same, a day in the life, right up until the part where he shot himself in the kitchen whilst on the phone to his son. I ran to the phone to speak to him, comfort him, but then I realized what I may be doing. The phone picked up at the other end, and before I could say a word, he was gone. I got my black suit and tie out once more, and repeated the same process for another parent. It ruined us all. After the funeral, I refused to touch the book. What if I had been causing these deaths by reading it? I couldn't go through it all again. But on Christmas Eve of 2011, I got a phone call from my brother's wife, Heather. Will had been putting Christmas lights on the roof when he slipped on ice and broke his neck, and he died almost instantly. I threw the phone at the wall and began to sob into my sleeve. Anger took the pain away for a moment, and I picked up the book and read through chapter 3. It was exactly as Heather had described. I fell asleep and woke up the next day with the book still on my lap. I decided to check on who was going to go next out of me and my sisters, and hopefully warn them, or myself, in some way. I turned the page, chapter 4, Mary and Sarah Sparks. I rushed through the story as fast as I could until I reached the end. One of my sisters and their partners would drown in a lake after colliding with another car on a one-way bridge. That same sickly feeling took over me. I met with my sisters later that day to exchange gifts, and I told them as calmly as I could muster to be careful when driving. I had to sound as sane as possible, mentioning the lake, the bridge, that in fact all 4 of them would be in a car at the same time. But at least I told them. Mary and Sarah drowned 8 months later in August 2012. After I went to the funeral, I picked up the book and turned to the final pages. Chapter 5, Aaron Sparks. But I didn't read it. I'd rather not live in fear for so long, so I decided to save it for nearer the time. After all, there was a sell-by date on it for a reason. Everything has been more normal in the past 5 months or so. Although I've lost interest in reading, so I'm back to my old miserable self. I questioned myself every day as to why she was doing this to me. But it didn't matter. It was all going to be over soon anyway. I've just finished reading the final chapter. It's 6/4/2013. I'm still sitting in my basement waiting for her to arrive. That's the way the ending goes, or so I've read.
Ooh.
That was a dumb one.
Oh no, that was kind of good.
There was no suspense. It's just like
Yeah.
it kind of dragged on. I don't know.
Nah.
You knew how it was gonna end from the fucking. As soon as it said last of the Sparks, and he said my last name's Sparks. Like, okay, yeah, I know where this is going.
True. So true. Okay, let's see here. Let's say.
Don't be nervous. I'm not nervous.
Who's nervous?
Queenie said I'm nervous, apparently.
Are you?
No.
No, of course not. Okay. Now we have Satan's Fall, The Strangers, and Aokigahara Diary. Those are the ones that are left. I don't know. This seems like kind of interesting. The Satan's Fall one.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So here is the story. I'll post it in chat. Hold on. I'll post it in our chat and then I'll post it in the actual one. Hey, Case. I know, right? So, I'm sorry, Captain of the Sails. Your house is freezing. Let's see. Am I taking any requests? I can, even though I already have stories pulled up that I was going to read, but I can take requests and, you know, weigh those options out. Doesn't matter to me.
These names are VV edgy.
Yeah, very, well, I mean, very.
Think of the target audience here.
I know,
People
right?
who enjoy listening to creepypasta readings.
That's right.
Obviously. How fucking weird.
Oh, creepy. I figure out which music I'm gonna play next. That's a good one. Ooh. Yeah, okay. We'll definitely do that one here. Alright, so yeah, this one's called Satan's Fall. Blue Rooster, what you may want to do is you may want to refresh. I know, right? You may want to refresh. That's why it said huge. Like the link at the top, it says huge. Yeah, so you may want to refresh the stream. That helps sometimes if you're getting booted out or like the connection's kind of slow. Angel, this is my friend Raptor. He's done several things with me before.
Hello.
Hello. Gotta be so weird. Just say hi like normal, God.
No. Boring.
It's boring. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. So I think I'm gonna start this one. Like I said, if anyone has any requests, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll look over them, and then we'll go from there. But in the meantime, I'll go ahead and I will start with Satan's Fall. And Raptor, feel free to chime in. There's dialogue in here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here we go. Let's see. The devil on the fiery porch. He was back again that year, the same as he'd been for 5 years running, keeping the majority of trick-or-treaters behind an imaginary line of uneasiness drawn at the edge of the curb with his hell-red grin and burning cauldrons. It was a scene from Faust, only this was no play. This was my neighborhood. It wasn't just kids who lingered apprehensively in the street, but parents as well. In a place where the definition of Halloween was more like cardboard skeletons and plastic jack-o'-lanterns, a guy with a penchant for fire and pitchforks could be extraordinarily scary. Really young children were hurried past their residence altogether via lawns on the opposite side of the street, hopefully distracted by candy long enough to save them from the psych-scarring nightmares certain to result from even the smallest glimpse of him. This left only the few, the brave, to make the journey and collect one of the candy bars given out by the devil basking in the red glow of the doorway. Trick-or-treating in the 1970s wasn't the flirt with death that it can be today. At that time, in most suburban settings, people lived in the same house for years and made the effort to get to know their neighbors and their neighbors' children. It was a safe haven from the malicious world beyond, a stronghold of sterile thoughts and selective ideals. That is why it was more alarming when the occasional anti-Cleaver oddballs, like the Warren family, managed to infiltrate the peaceful utopia and upset the balance of neatly trimmed lawns and Tupperware parties. Especially when at Halloween, their oldest son, Wayne Warren, painted himself red, donned horns, and sat on a throne between two flaming cauldrons on their sunken porch. My first encounter with him was when my father volunteered to secure one of Satan's fat candy bars on my behalf. I watched wide-eyed and at the curb while my mother yacked up the other neighborhood mothers about the sick nature of the affair. Later that night, as I spread my bounty out upon the living room floor, she snatched the king-size Snickers that the devil had given and tossed it into the trash. Only later did I understand the action, although to my knowledge no one had ever reported any ill effects from his confectionery treats. The grease paint devil quickly became a milestone of bravery for the youth of our neighborhood. As we got older, our worth was measured upon whether we had trick-or-treated his house on our own. For most of the neighborhood kids, it was a confrontation with their own childhood fears, a rite of passage. But my own eventual encounter with him reckoned with more than mere cultural demon speak. For me, it was not a conquest, but a beginning, a passageway to a haunted life well beyond the October ritual. And after what it indirectly wrought upon my life and the life of my childhood friend, Dan Rutgers, I came to realize that I had more in common with Wayne Warren than anyone would ever know. I was old enough to trick-or-treat on my own. I had been for a few years, having entered the 7th grade, but had thus far chosen to skip the devil's house despite my semi freedom. And as the candy collector stood entwined in trepidation at the end of this lawn that night, I looked on, ready to cast away silly childhood fears. I was Samhain, by the way. Fucked up. In the recessed front porch of the tan stone house, the devil sat on a black throne, pitchfork in hand, and grinning like a madman. On either side of him, a cauldron belched hot flames, which illuminated the entire alcove with a yellow-red glow that brought a little piece of hell right there to our suburban street. Dark music, probably borrowed from the Omen soundtrack, boomed from somewhere on the porch like a theme for a black mass, while sounds of the haunted house crept out of the home's dark windows. They were open just enough to let in some of the autumn air, which was uncharacteristically cool for Texas even in late October. Every once in a while, the devil would bark out something to the effect of, "Come on up, kids," or just let out a string of vein-chilling laughs that echoed off of the houses and faded into the night air like a horde of goblins. As a fan of the horror film classics, somewhere inside I had begun to admire his mastery of Halloween, but the fear of something I did not fully understand still outweighed this association. The man behind the red face was something real, and that's what made him scary to me, even if some people simply wrote him off as a self-aggrandizing jerk.
Are we going up there?
Dan asked me as I stood at the curb siphoning the last bit of courage from my body. Dan was a few years older and several inches taller, but we were two boys made from the same mold. We'd been best friends for 6 years now, both possessing a fever for Hot Wheels, big gyms, and superheroes. I could see his own reservation just under the green skin of his incredible Hulk face. His mother was an Inferno preaching Baptist, and though I could not understand at the time, he grappled with issues far deeper than my own regarding the fiendish display. Yeah, I answered, although I had yet to top off my courage tank. Our mutual friend, Bob, spoke from behind his Planet of the Apes mask.
Y'all can go if you want, but I ain't. My brother said that guy's a goon and you don't wanna have to kick his butt when you find a razor blade in my candy bar.
I ain't gonna eat the candy, I replied, stating what I thought was obvious. The music boomed forth with a new strain, and I looked hard at the real fire, the past prime teenager in the red makeup, and the iron gates which stood open at the porch's arc. Well, he ain't gonna kill us or anything. He's been doing this ever since I can remember, and lots of kids have gone up there. I nudged my head toward two older kids who had just been up to Satan. They just went, and if they did, then I'm going. Dan, you coming?
Mm-hmm.
Getting a yes from Dan, I put my foot onto the devil's brown lawn and began the approach. I tried to imagine what I saw across the street the other 364 days out of the year. A stony-looking house with a dark porch and some skinny druggy guy coming and going in his beat-up Camaro. Sometimes kissing or beating his girlfriend a little, but always giving me a chin-up nod as if to say I was cool. It was just Wayne Warren, not the devil. Telling myself this made it a little better, but on Halloween, this guy was just plain different. Just plain scary. And as I neared, I tried the customary cool nod, but Wayne didn't nod back. Instead, he grinned like a mental patient and let out a laugh that resonated in the sunken porch as if it sunk all the way down to hell. Dan, in an attempt at proper All Hallows etiquette, moved up beside me, held out his bag, and muttered,
Trick or treat.
which sounded ridiculous under the circumstances. Wayne cackled and threw a chunky bar into his bag. Then he focused on me and my spirit gum wolfman face.
Something special for you, my friend,
He said, reaching down beside his seat. He pulled out something, gazed at it a moment, and then threw it into the sack I held open in front of me, as if it were my empty soul waiting for him to fill. I didn't get a good look at it, but I didn't care. I'd have a better look as soon as Dan and I got out of the yard. Without any more explanation, Wayne stoked one of the cauldron fires, spit, and turned his attention to a group of approaching teenagers. Dan and I hurried back to the curb where Bob waited. Let's go next door and check out whatever it was he gave me, I said. Squatting down under a street lamp, Dan and I pulled out our devil's booty.
Just a regular candy bar, but maybe there's a razor blade in it?
He said, ripping into the package and breaking the chunky into several pieces, finding nothing but chocolate inside. Bob removed his Cornelius mask.
What'd you get?
I pulled out the weird item Wayne had thrown into my bag and held it up in the bath of white streetlight. It looks like a tooth or maybe a horn, I said, not having seen anything like it before. The thing was about 3 inches in length, jagged at one end and tapering into a curved point at the other. But instead of bone or enamel, it was made from a semi-transparent material with what looked like microscopic electronic components inside.
Let me check it out.
Dan said, grabbing it from me.
That stuff in there looks like this computer board that my dad showed me.
I took it back and looked again beyond its translucent surface. Computers are a lot bigger than this, I said authoritatively. Bob squinted at it.
That's weird. I bet my brother knows what it is.
Maybe we should ask him, I suggested. Bob's brother Ronnie rolled the horn thing between his fingers as he looked at it under the desk lamp.
Looks like it just came from a robot or something. Y'all are a bunch of goons.
He tossed it back at me.
Maybe it came from that alien that crashed over in Motor Valley. Woo!
He added, making a spooky woo sound. Huh?
Huh?
All three of us replied. Ronnie laughed.
Guess y'all were still in diapers. A few years ago, the cops and everybody went out there when something crashed in the woods between Motor Valley Road and Screaming Bridge. Supposedly, they'd found a blown-up flying saucer, but never found any aliens. When that idiot Wayne Warren was still going to school, I heard a rumor about how he and a friend of his were out drinking one night and found some flying saucer parts. I think that was about the time he started dressing up like Satan on Halloween. Maybe he's giving out those UFO parts instead of candy. Cheap ass. I think it's all bullshit.
With that, Ronnie left Bob's room. We all looked again at the thing. Pretty cool story, man. We ought to go out there and check it out. Maybe this did come from a spaceship, I suggested. Dan nodded.
I ain't never seen anything like it. Y'all are crazy,
Bob said, looking suspiciously at us both. Anything good was usually off limits. It's a trade-off for having parents that give a shit about you. I wasn't allowed in the creek, not allowed to attend spin-the-bottle parties, not allowed in the yard of the kid who talked like a sailor with a belly full of gin, not allowed to ride my bike to Dairy Queen, and basically not allowed to venture beyond the small quadrant of my neighborhood. Motor Valley was definitely off my childhood map. As a result, I spent half my youth in the creek or making bike runs out of the quadrant and the other half making up plausible excuses for I was late. So a trip to Motor Valley with my usual accomplice, Dan, was nothing too exceptional. But the possibility of dead alien creatures was, and that's why this mission was going to happen, regardless of any potential consequences. Bob, however, couldn't go. He was grounded for getting caught with a pack of his dad's cigarettes. Looking back, I can't blame him for finding a way out. Motor Valley got its name from the motocross track that was built on the west end of its expanse. Except for a few ill-repaired roads that cut through it, the valley was mostly crushed Texas woods and low-lying flatland which collected water to create the closet thing to a bog Central Texas could have. Something did crash in there. It was no wonder that collecting all the pieces was difficult. But since the time of the crash, which I later dated at September 30th, 1972, by searching old newspapers, much of the water had been irrigated out to subsidize a local cattle feed farm, making it impossible to get around in the area without sinking in muck. Dan and I biked down the road past the old junior high school and out across the Highway 10, where a few industrial buildings and a bar called the Firehouse stood like holdouts against the concept of renovation. These were the last few constructs of civilization before Motor Valley took over. As we reached the end of the industrial stretch, we right-turned onto Motor Valley Road, which sloped down a gradual incline until it eventually curved south and cut right through the center of the valley itself. Few cars ever came this way unless they were there to dump something or to take a shortcut to Highway 10, and Dan and I pedaled down the center of the curbless macadam as if we owned it. Off to the side, either in the gullies or along the occasional dirt paths that spidered away from the road, we saw discarded relics of prosperity littering the land like pockmarks. Old washing machines, treadbare tires, skeletal couches, and limbless dolls, and their abandoned afterlife serving as shelters for the dark, crawling creatures which hid underneath. We stopped pedaling to coast the hill.
Do you remember the horn thing?
Dan huffed. Yeah.
You're gonna be grounded forever if your mom finds out about this.
I nodded dramatically. What did you tell your mom we were doing?
Going to Dairy Queen in the arcade?
I hope your mom and my mom don't talk for some reason before we get back. You know how my mom is always calling to find out where I am. I told her I was just going to the arcade. She doesn't want me going over to the Dairy Queen. Did you hear the story on the news where this guy went into a Dairy Queen in Lubbock and whipped out his pecker and got thrown in jail?
That sounds like what Jimmy's cousin did at his birthday party.
Didn't some girl kick him in the nads when he did?
Yeah, he had to stay there for 2 weeks.
Excellent. We made the curve and headed onto the long stretch of Motor Valley Road. After more than a half mile, we made it to the narrow side road which led down to Screaming Ridge. I'm sure that wasn't its original name, but that was the name it went by. One of those tragic lovers' suicide stories went along with it. We'd heard plenty about it, but had yet to make the trip out. I guess it took potential dead aliens to make it worthwhile. Turning left, we pedaled up the side of the long stretch of Motor Valley Road. Turning left, we pedaled up the side road whose name was a mystery since it was no street sign. As we crunched along its crumbling blacktop, the trees began to grow thicker, leaning over the road to form a canopy. They cast a shadow across the road like a dark tunnel. Bony branches were beginning to emerge from the clusters of leaves, which were falling away with each cool gust of autumn wind. For a moment, I thought of the forest in Oz, but such a pleasant thought quickly faded. I was positive that any beast lurking in these thorn-ridden groves would not be singing or dancing. In fact, they were not even chirping or growling. It was oddly silent, which was even more disturbing. As we neared Screaming Bridge, the asphalt turned to sandy loam, making it difficult for our bikes despite the fact that they were the rugged Huffy models with plastic gas tanks screwed to the crossbar to emulate motorcycles. We decided to park them out of sight and go the rest of the way on foot. The bridge was nothing, really. A dirt road that ended in a huge drop filled with sun-faded beer cans and other less identifiable trash. After taking a piss off its edge, we headed south in the direction Ronnie had told us the UFO had supposedly crashed. I checked my pocket for the lock blade knife I'd bought with my allowance prior to my last hunting trip with my father. I was no stranger to the country, having been brought along on numerous deer hunts since I was old enough to walk, but in spite of my self-proclaimed exploration expertise and my determination to expose the mystery locked away in Motor Valley, my heart beat hard against my ribs. There was something about the place that seemed deceptive, maybe even evil, which I had not encountered in any of my previous rural expeditions. Crisscrossing the area, we began to look for any signs of, well, whatever signs there might be of a flying saucer crash, but the undergrowth was thick and I soon realized that there would be little hope of finding anything without knowledge of the exact impact location. We wandered on through, scanning for burnt trees or any other peculiar markings. After about 30 minutes, Dan signaled me over to a dense clump of trees where he had spotted something.
Check this out,
He said, directing my vision past the branches to a dilapidated shack standing in a clearing 25 yards away. It wasn't a UFO, but at least it was something other than trees and rocks. Dan looked openly disturbed by the possibility of who or what might be making it at home. I wonder if anyone lives there. I don't see any cars, I remarked.
I thought I saw something move by that window.
Dan said solemnly. I looked at the filmy window. I don't know how you could have. Look how dirty it is.
Yeah, maybe I was seeing things. I think we better get out of here. Search back over closer to that bridge.
Let's not worry about it, I retorted, trying to look at the situation logically. If anybody does live there, they'll probably be real old, and we could always outrun them. Dan nodded, but I could tell he wasn't wholeheartedly backing me on the decision. Let's go do this, I began as I heard the sound of a stick crack behind us. I spun around. Just feet from us stood a man. He looked old, but his unkempt appearance made an accurate guess at his age impossible. His hair was a brownish gray and poked out from his head like wild grass, framing a dirty, unshaven face. A demented smile revealed several missing teeth from the brown, rotted mess inside his mouth. He was scratching himself through a convenient hole in his ratty overalls with a handful of long, curling nails as he leered at us. We started to bolt.
Hold on, youngins. You boys can't just come poking around here without talking to old Licky.
The man made a scrunching gesture with his face, which looked like the epileptic wink of a madman. We halted our retreat. I fished for something good to say. My dad's looking for some firewood right back there, I said, pointing in no particular direction. We were just looking around.
You can't fool old Licky. I know as you're out here by yourselves. If your dad was around, you wouldn't look so scared,
he said, this time fully protruding his tongue and circling around his lips in a nervous motion.
Really, sir?
Dan began, but the old man cut him off.
My feelings might get hurt if you keep lying, boy.
We're sorry, but we have to get back home soon, I added, as if I were quoting from the repertoire of Wally Cleaver.
Not before you come on in and have a drink with Licky. I want to show you something.
He began to walk toward us. Now, to this day, I can't tell you why we went into that weirdo shack, but I guess we feared more what would have happened if we didn't follow his wishes than what would happen if we did. Maybe I had more faith in my knife than I should have. Regardless, I kept my eyes on the old man as he led us into the leaning gray shanty.
You boys like Coca-Colas?
He asked as we followed him inside. Yeah, I said, knowing full well that Dan was a strict 7-Up drinker, but under the circumstances figuring it wouldn't matter. The first thing that struck us sour about the inside of the shack was the smell. worse than the smell of Licky himself. It was like the musty smell of an old house exponentially worsened until it reached near organic putrefaction. A snail of nausea slinked across my gut as the first thick waft of stench rolled into my lungs. The cramped single room of the shanty was as rotten on the inside as it was on the outside. The exposed boards of the ceiling were completely gray and covered with cobwebs. An old rickety cot was shoved into one corner, a brownish stain covering its sagging middle. Over at the opposite end was a broken-down stove resembling a leper with its rust-eaten porcelain finish. A tattered beige couch sat rotting against the long wall, almost hidden by the countless piles of old water-stained magazines. They looked mostly like Playboys and Hustlers as far as I could tell. To our right sat a dusty old wooden crate. It looked to me like a coffin used back in the 1800s. A fat rat sniffed around its base. But the most shocking aspect of the shack was the wallpaper. Old pinup style nudie pictures had been cut from countless magazines and stuck to every visible inch of wall. Superimposed on top of this layer were random pictures of goats and other wild beasts taken from magazines I was not familiar with. They were all faded by the damp and rotting conditions. I had seen plenty of naked pictures in my grandfather's garage, so I wasn't too shocked, but Dan's religious background didn't seem to be mixing well with the mass of nude women and goats.
You boys wouldn't be looking for a UFO, would you?
Licky asked as he began digging in a dirty box near the stove. I peeled my eyes from a cherry nipple blonde. Why would you think that? I asked.
I've caught plenty of curious peoples digging around here like moles. They think they's gonna find some alien body.
Why would they think that? I asked dumbly.
Smart boy like you sure to know about the UFO crash over here.
Licky said, pulling out 2 dusty bottles from the box.
Why else he'd be out here nosing round?
Well, we've heard about it, I guess, but I didn't know about alien bodies.
These are good Coca-Colas,
He said, popping the caps off the dirty Coke bottles with his teeth and handing one each to Dan and I as he made another 360 around his chops with his tongue. I discreetly knocked a dirt dauber's nest off the side of my bottle and took a drink. Actually, I let the liquid touch my lips, making it appear that I had taken a drink, not letting any of it slip into my mouth. Dan did the same.
How do you like old Licky's place? You boys got names?
Jim, I said, making one up. Dan delivered one too.
And Horace.
Under any circumstance, I would have busted out laughing. But the unsettling atmosphere suppressed any such reactions.
I used to have a granddaddy named Horace. Loved him to death, that old bugger. Silly as a whistle, though. Cut his own arm off one night thinking it was a rattler.
The old man laughed loudly and moved his arm around like it was a snake. I glanced back at the door. I felt better knowing that we stood closer to the door than Licky. I noticed Dan still staring queasily at the exotic wallpaper with a clash of curiosity and horror as if he were looking at a car wreck. Did you see the UFO crash? I asked, trying to conceal my nervousness.
Well, not exactly. I come here after that.
You're looking for the UFO too?
No, them Rangers hauled that off. I was waiting for something. A horn.
With that, my heart went flatline. The thing in my pocket was in some way connected to the old man. I began to realize that maybe what Wayne Warren had said about finding some flying saucer parts may have been true.
You ain't happened to see a horn out there, have you?
Hello?
That's you.
I did.
No, the next
Oh,
one's
good.
you.
Oh. Was it a real UFO from outer space?
Dan finally kicked in.
Yep, from a planet so far away that them stupid scientists ain't seen it yet. You never answer about that horn.
His twang suddenly growing menacing.
You little clever Dickens know something, don't you?
He ran his hand across the crate like he was caressing the skin of a lover. What horn?
Fess up, boy. If you got the horn, you can't resist it. I know, cause I found the other one while I was searching when I worked for the sheriff's office. We was out there cleaning up after the crash. I found something else too. The rest of them never saw.
Fear finally slapped my common sense. I pulled the clear horn thing out of my pocket. I got this trick-or-treating, I said as I threw it to the floor behind Licky and bolted for the door. Dan turned to follow, but a deep bark stopped us midway. A large dog stood growling outside. We looked back at Licky, fully expecting him to move in for the kill right then.
Colossus, simmer down!
He yelled gruffly.
He's just a tad grumpy, if you know what I mean. You don't be scared of him or old Licky. I like you boys,
he said, picking up the horn. What do you want from us? I demanded.
Now, youngin', don't get all upset. You brought me this here horn that I've been looking for.
Does that have something to do with the UFO? I asked, trying to calm down.
Where'd you get it?
From some guy dressed up like the devil on Halloween.
I knew it,
he said with a lick.
I knew it'd find its way back here one way or another, just like the devil. Goddamn.
He seemed excited by the fact that Wayne had been dressed like Satan. I wasn't sure what the connection was between him and this old man, or if there even was one, but somehow we had been transporting something very important.
Does it belong to an alien?
Some folks might call him...
Sorry.
Some folks might call him an alien. But it really belongs to the devil. I've been keeping his body here since his spacecraft wrecked, waiting for his other horn to turn up. Sometimes it takes the dickens for things to work out, but they always do. Now I can get the rewards I deserve.
The devil? I asked skeptically.
Yes, sir. He's in here.
We were speechless.
I bet you boys would like to see him, wouldn't you?
I shook my head slowly as tears began to well in my eyes. Dan just stood frozen as if he were looking down upon Virgil's 9 rings of hell.
Well, here he is.
Licky yelled as he flung open the crate's lid. Its old hinges screeched like a dying animal. Inside lay the body of a creature. It was a brownish red and shriveled like the corpse of a mummy. It had arms and legs and a human-shaped torso, but they were thin and wiry. Its pointed chin and bulbous forehead made it appear like a reddish version of the little gray aliens that people always claimed to see. A set of pointed teeth were thrust forward from the retracted lips, opposing the huge sunken sockets in whose valleys rested closed eyes. I could smell the acrid odor of aged filling the room as if the beast were centuries old, having soaked up the stench of death and decay for an eternity. We were repulsed, though neither Dan nor I could take our eyes from the entombed thing.
Just like in the storybooks. Except he didn't come from no hell. He's from up there.
Licky said, pointing to the sky.
Been coming here longer than you and I could figure. Don't you like him?
That's when I noticed the horn. The creature had one horn identical to the one I had been given. A jagged hole at the other side of his head made it apparent that he had once possessed 2.
At last I can raise him again. I'll be made a prince of the sky when he sees what old Licky's done for him.
The old man said, drooling a line of spit onto the creature's chest as he began to fit the missing horn back in place. The dog outside barked, and we remained trapped between 2 rapidly off-balancing evils. Licky laughed as the component finally clicked into place. A faint whir became audible from the coffin as he pulled back.
Look close, boys. You brung back old Nick.
The thing began to move, not mechanically like a robot as I would have thought, but more like an organic being that had been sleeping for a long time. It sat upright as the eyes began to open, their dark, menacing look like black mirrors as they focused on our white faces. Its skin became more supple, and its lips rolled back down over his teeth. The thing smiled, a grin that was beyond pure evil, that seemed to crawl through my eyes, down my throat, and squeeze the bloody pulp of my heart like a constrictor. But I resisted, and so did Dan. Breaking our gaze, we ran for the door as the beast jumped from the crate. I had been used somehow to bring the horn back to the creature. It seemed to explain my complete lack of good judgment when we followed Licky into the shack. I had been possessed by something much the way Wayne Warren had been, dressing up like the devil, probably unknowingly waiting for some adventurous kid to take the horn from him like the wind carries a seed to its final destination, where it could root and produce seed of its own.
I heard you a mute.
Licky cried. The devil responded with a snap of his clawed hand. Blood splattered the nude paper wall as the old man chortled and fell to the ground, callously beheaded despite his service. "Shit!" I screamed as Dan and I burst through the door and tripped over the dog. We both hit the ground along with the dog in a whirlwind of confusion and gnashing teeth. I felt a few bites hit my arms, but when the devil crashed through the door, the dog yelped and darted into the trees. The creature smiled again and looked at us. It was one of those split seconds between reactions when the mind and body are trying to get into sync, when the true perspective of time is lost. For a few endless seconds, the foul beast stood above us, and before we could pull ourselves up to run, he turned and headed into the woods. He spun his neck around to look at us one more time as he blended into the countryside and disappeared. Dan and I ran in the opposite direction, back toward our bikes. We said nothing as we careened through the branches and undergrowth, gouging at us with fingery thorns as if it were reluctant to let us leave. It wasn't until we had pedaled all the way back to Motor Valley Road that I finally broke the silence and confronted the reality of what had taken place. "Do you think it was the devil?" Dan, terror etched into his face, shook his head.
If it was an alien and there's more of them.
He began to cry. He could feel my hands trembling on the handle grips. The reality of aliens and devils or something that was too much for my young mind. "We can't tell anyone," I said.
I don't ever want to talk about it again.
"We won't,"
Never.
was the last clear word I heard before he fell into a repetitive mumble. If it was the devil, alien, or otherwise, and we were responsible for bringing him to life, Jesus. I grappled with the thought that has slowly wrestled the life from me over the years like a patient serpent subduing its prey. The same thought that was responsible for the phone call I just received. I gently sat the telephone receiver back into the cradle. It had been Dan's sister on the line. He was found dead in his car that morning. He'd been missing for weeks. She asked me if I had any idea why he would have driven out to a remote spot in Motor Valley and put a gun to his head. I told her I didn't know.
Okay, that was a good one.
Right? That was good.
I gotta say, Old Licky is up there with like the pianist for my favorite.
Yeah. The pianist was good.
That was such a good story.
Yeah, it was good. I don't have a little sister, Queenie. I don't have any little siblings. Unless you count like adopted little siblings. Just do adoptive siblings like surrogates, like ones that I've adopted over in time?
I don't know. Depends on what you mean by that.
No, I mean like, friends that are like more than friends, like the friends that I've had over the years, and I'm like, you're practically like family.
Yeah, no, that doesn't count.
Okay, then no, I don't have any younger siblings. It's just me.
I have a younger brother.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, he's awesome.
You guys kind of look alike.
Yeah, some people say we look nothing alike. Some people say we look a lot alike.
See, I only say you guys look kind of alike. Like, kind of.
Yeah.
You clearly have, like, there are features that you clearly are just yours and features that are clearly just your brother's, but, like, a little bit, like, around, like, the eyes, y'all kind of look alike.
Mike looks a lot more like my dad, and I look a lot more like my mom.
Oh. Yeah.
You brought Licky to life. Love the voice. I love that voice, too. I'd do it forever if I could. It's so fun.
I don't know, like some of my favorite roles are the ones where I do get to like do accents and stuff. Like when I was doing Jason the Toy Maker, I played Maggie, and she was the girl with the British accent. And then when I did the Eastwood Clan, I did the backwoods kind of bushwhacking family accent. That was fun.
Yeah.
So I really like doing accents. Those are always a lot of fun. Maintaining the accent through like a narration is really hard, though. It's one thing to do it for dialect.
Old Licky's accent is like the easiest accent for me to maintain. And even that, like, I slipped up a couple times. I said aren't at one point.
Yeah, I know, instead of ain't. I was like, ah! Yeah.
Ain't you a beauty?
No, I can't. It's really hard. A lot of people think that just because I'm from the South that immediately that's what I'm supposed to sound like. and I cannot sound like that to save my life.
Yeah.
Or I cannot maintain that accent for very long. I fuck up really bad.
My dad was born and raised in Chicago, and he still doesn't have that accent.
Mm-hmm.
Say hi if you want Eden to speak with a British accent for the rest of the stream. I.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh,
I will do Russian.
you'll do Russian and I'll do English? Okay. Alright. Alright then.
Never mind, please stop.
This is gonna be hard. If I continue to do this. I don't know why everyone loves my British accent. It's really weird. I don't think it's genuine. Well, no, I take that back. It's I have moments where it sounds pretty good.
That wasn't one of them.
Low key want to hear how Australia. Oh, my Australian one.
Yeah, do it.
That one's a little bit hard. I don't know if I can keep it up. Don't know.
Ooh. All right.
It's a little bit tricky. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky.
You got a real fuck.
I feel like I have to talk like I have to talk like I've a bunch of mashed potatoes in the back of my teeth. That's so I'm.
It's a really good analogy.
That's true. So I have to talk like that. It's like a bunch of mishmash in my mouth. It's really weird.
Oh, a bunch of mishmash in my mouth.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's
and when you say no, you gotta like put an extra like three vowels in there.
Yeah.
Like,
no. Like I don't know.
No.
I don't know if I can keep it up. Don't think I can. Don't think I think I can do it.
Australian and British accents are very close. You know why? But
Right.
Australian is a derivation of a British accent.
Exactly.
Australia is where they put the criminals.
It's true. Adelaide's full of criminals, I tell you.
It's full of British criminals.
It's full of English scum. Really English scum.
Say crikey.
Say
crikey.
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 You know, Aussies actually hate it when you say that.
No, I know.
Oh my god, I love pistachios. Oh my goodness, I love them. I need to go get me like a big old bag.
You have to talk like you have marbles in your mouth.
I know. That's
you also have to leave out certain words.
Like.
To talk Russian, you speak like marbles in your mouth.
I cannot do that. I've tried like my really funny one that I always go to, like, we're going to read a story. Like, I feel like that one's like Romanian or some shit. Exactly, it's like Romanian. It's weird. I was going to read a story. It's not just me. Quit it.
Yeah, it is.
Oh my god, pistachios. Why are you so good? Okay, I'm gonna quit.
Pistachio.
Pistachios are so yummy.
The American accent is actually the original poor person English accent. I could see that, but I'm pretty sure that's just a Cockney English accent.
True. So true. All right. Oh, I see Tommy's back. Are you off the phone now, Tommy? They all agree. You speak like marbles in your mouth.
You speak like marbles in your mouth. The hardest one is Arabic. Yeah, I can't do Arabic. Not for the life.
I'm not even gonna try that.
Arabic and German, I can't do.
You speak German. See, that's Russian. See, I can't even.
Yeah, that was Russian.
Let's see. What was the other one?
I just sound really flamboyant when I do German.
I know.
Yes, I am off the phone. Thank you.
Praise Lord.
Irish accent. I can really only do the leprechaun. Jesus.
The
Christ,
leprechaun? What was that?
Pennsylvania.
that was like the leprechaun. Leprechaun, yes. And it's like, what?
No.
Sound like Dracula. Dracula. Blah. Blah. Blah, I say blah.
Irish accents are pretty difficult to get down.
That's pretty good though.
I know some Irish people, and their Irish is so thick.
Yeah.
Like instead of saying four, they say fur. Like the OR is the IR.
Sure, yeah.
Like, and then when I'm like,
the thing with the Irish accents is it's very much at the front of your mouth.
Yeah, in the back of your teeth.
The back of your teeth, yeah. Fuck, what was that?
That was deviating into German. Yeah, actually, that was kind of Polish. Yeah. Um,
I am mostly Polish, so that's probably part of it.
Mm.
Strawberry smuggles? No, I'm not gonna. Oh shit!
Look at ya. You said it anyway. Smeagol's. Smeagol's. Strawberry Smeagol's.
Why?
I love that this is the creepy story stream that always makes me laugh out loud.
Feels good to be appreciated.
It does. It's true. Try to keep it light in this piece.
Tommy, did you hear old Licky in the last story?
Oh, you know what? So many childhood traumas were brought up by old Licky. Thank you so much.
Oh, I love it.
I've got like moonshine family down in North Carolina, and I was just like, Jesus Christ. I feel like I'm back home as a child.
Raptor's a deviant. I don't know what the fuck that means.
It means you're a deviant.
You're a very creepy person, I guess.
I think deviant just means rebellious. Like if you're a deviant.
I don't know.
Rebellious raptor.
You're a criminal.
I'm not gonna say that scary reptilian person.
Hello, Swagger Bomb.
Hi, Swagger Bomb. Sorry, excuse me.
Entire stream.
Be like fucking. I'm gonna like.
Hello, stream.
Hello,
Kenny,
stream.
you missed
Hello.
2 stories, but they're not gonna stop, so you'll be fine.
That's fine. I'm just like cracking pistachio shells, whatever.
You and these nuts.
God, they're so good. They're so better.
You heard it here first, folks.
That's right. Eden loves fucking nuts, man. Especially pistachios. Jesus. So good. I only have a few more left. I'm sad. I'm gonna have to run to the corner store here in a little while and get some more.
Or
Oh, it's
maybe
from
you
Detroit.
can
I want to play that.
slow down.
Oh, that game is so good. This game is so good. I got it the day it came out. I was like, yes.
Cool.
I was like, take my money.
You know what would be funny if you do a live stream with you and V playing it? So you
Man, so we can show how bad V is in fucking QuickTime events. Jesus Christ.
All the death.
She died so many
I know
times.
what deviant means. I know the definition of deviant. Thank you.
Oh. Anyway, but it was pretty funny because I was sitting there. I was like, really? Really? And she goes, I'm just getting so confused. And I was like, there's colors! There are colors on the screen! And she was still fucking up. And she was like, well, I was like, if there's not colors on the screen, there's shapes. You have no excuse to fuck this up. They cover all bases. I was like,
someone needs to write a creepypasta with Eden snapping after running out of pistachios.
oh my god, right? Like, I would fucking, oh my god. That would be, like, that is the equivalent. Okay, so I'm a foodie. I love food. I love to fucking eat. And, that's right. At me. Yes, I will. But I love it. And so, if someone were to tell me that I couldn't eat seafood anymore, that I couldn't eat pistachios, that I couldn't eat kimchi, couldn't eat rice, I would go absolutely insane. Because, like, I love all of those. And plus, I'm half Asian, so it's like, it's kind of typical that that's part of my diet. And noodles. Oh my god, if I couldn't have noodles, if my life was suddenly, like, you can't have gluten anything. Like, fuck you! Like, I'm gonna eat it all and just fucking die afterwards. Like, just swan dive into the grave. Like, fuck it! I'm going out with a bang! You know, like, shh. Exactly. I'm a fucking god. Whee! Like, that's me jumping into the fucking grave. Like, I don't give a shit no more. Like, fuck it. There's no point in living if I couldn't eat any of those things. I'd be like, fucking just end it now. I had a good life. It was a good run, guys. Boom! Right in there in the face. Just end it. Just get it over with.
You're so passionate about
Well,
I am passionate about food.
Jesus. You guys don't have to write a creepypasta about it because it just happened.
That's right. It's what would fucking happen right there.
You're welcome. You're welcome. There it is.
Somebody written for you.
Creepypasta all right there.
That's right. It's all out there. What would happen if I couldn't eat any of those things anymore? I would just fucking quit life. Straight up. Just quit. Or I'd become...
The noodleless nut job. I love that.
That's really funny.
I love that so much.
Somebody write a story called Night of the Noodleless Nut Job. I will read that shit on the air. I promise. Or read it live. Someone write it.
There you go, people. Challenge is out. Night of the Noodleless Nut Job. Let's go.
It's all right. Somebody get that ready to go. I'll read it. I'll read it live. Record that shit. Okay, all I gotta do is go back in the stream and just like chop out that part that I just talked about. It's like a 30-second creepypasta.
It's just like and then have Raptor just read the title, Night of the Noodleless Nut Job, in a real spooky, like dark, dastardly voice.
Night of the Noodleless Nut Job.
Exactly, just like that.
Yes, perfect. And play a little 30-second clip. There you go. Best creepypasta ever.
It's true. That's how it happened. It's exactly how that shit would go down. All right, so Tommy has been bugging me all week to read my story that I did. I submitted this story to a writing contest for IO9. It was for Halloween, and we still haven't heard back from them.
No, we haven't actually. So I think we're just gonna.
So I'm gonna say I'm just gonna be like, fuck it. If I get chosen, oh well, I'll just delete this part of the stream. But no, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of waiting. So this one's called the uplink, and basically the whole premise is that we had to take a version of death, like what death would be like in the future, and how people would embrace it or not embrace it, and what would be the difference between it. And it had to be like, yeah, and it was your interpretation of death in the future. And so the way that Tommy and I went about it is we went with like a more futuristic type of version of death where people don't actually, well, in my version, people don't actually die. They get re-uploaded. And I'll explain that in a moment, or the story will explain itself in a moment. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead.
Other dialogue.
Huh?
Is there any other dialogue in the story?
Yes, there is. I will send you the story here.
Okay, cool.
And you can play the person. What was that?
So it sounds like a yeet. Yes, he yeeted in excitement.
Yeet. Yep, and that is the name of the story.
Well, shoot. I just have Raptor read mine. That would be perfect.
Rude.
What? Well, then fine, you read mine. I don't care.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, I want to read it.
Fine, you read it, but yours must be done. We haven't heard anything, so I'm going with they haven't made up their mind yet.
Okay. All right, so this story is called The Uplink. And here we go. When I came to, I was in a burning field. The air was so thick with smoke I could barely breathe. The once familiar town was unrecognizable. It looked like the remains of a battlefield from a movie. But that didn't last long either. The fire had died down by the time the sun rose. The tall wall of flame had shortened and most of the buildings had fallen. It felt strange being the only thing in that place that still had its original form. The others looked like charred silhouettes of what they once were. Was I the only one left alive? I had no way of knowing, and I lacked both the energy and desire to seek out the answer. I felt that since I survived, I should live on. I started walking, the building crumbling behind me, my incentive to move forward, to escape the danger. I wasn't really concerned about getting burned up like the people lying around me. The enemy's air raid had ended. But still, I had to keep moving. It was already a wonder I was still alive, so I didn't know if a rescue team would even be coming. Would I survive? Could I survive? They say that death is the end of everything. Sure, maybe 300 years ago that would have been the truth, before scientists were able to develop technology to help the human race obtain a form of immortality, a way for humanity to escape death completely. Well, if you had deep enough pockets, that is. The human brain, broken down, is simply a hub for data collection. Memories, experiences, talents, skills, feelings. It was all an amalgamation of various chemicals in the brain, connectors and relays that transmitted signals and transferred information throughout the body. Essentially, the mind is merely a supercomputer for the body, a piece of squishy hardware. In the year 2040, scientists found a way to take away the squishy bits. They called it the uplink, a more advanced version of the cloud where piles of personal data are stored away. Everyone's basic information was placed into the uplink, but only a few were granted access to it. The times access was granted were limited per person. Special extenuating circumstances applied, of course, but those were very rare. Every time a human being was born, their infant bodies were scanned, and a computer was able to accurately configure how a person would look in their mid to late 20s. A bioroid construct model was then built and stored away in a large warehouse labeled with a unique serial number that would place the model to the infant when they were born. In the event of a person's death, their memories, experiences, talents, etc. will be downloaded from the uplink and into the construct model. Then, voila! Another shot at continuing the life cycle. While it has been scientifically proven that humans tend to leave a heavier carbon footprint and machines leave a smaller one, an expiration date was given to these constructs. It was necessary and a way to help spur productivity among those who were able to return from the land of the dead. 20 years. After that, maintenance was required or else the body would shut down. If an individual could not afford regular maintenance on their bodies, they would be sent to the recycling center to have the constructs broken down into biodegradable material to be reused elsewhere. Waste not, want not. This quickly separated the poor and working classes from the wealthy. After all, why keep them around when basic robots could perform menial tasks and produce more efficient forms of manual labor? Wealth, power, and an individual's mind was much more valuable. The first uplink is free. Every human was entitled to this service. But after 20 years, the body was forced into shutdown mode. If something happened to the construct before the expiration date, there was even less of a guarantee for an upgrade. Imagine being murdered and no one being able to recover the body. Or worse, the shell was hacked and then the authorities were dealing with the complex case of identity fraud, given that it was even discovered that the construct was hacked in the first place. These instances have become much more common in the last 80 years. While the Earthsphere Unified Nation has done its best to crack down on these cases, it has become increasingly difficult thanks to the Overriders, an outlaw faction that fought against the system thrown on the shoulders of mankind with no means to defend themselves against it. Death was death, but so was life. What right did any of the world have to dictate how a person lived, died, and whether the choice to continue living was even viable? The fact that living was a commodity was almost pathetic in various aspects. The Overriders were fighting to return the world to the natural order of things, to bring everything back to a state of balance as it once had been centuries prior. Some believed their ideals were selfish, others believed they had a hidden agenda, a reason to escape their own hypocrisy. My name is Key. I'm 95 years old, and today is the 7th time I've died. I collapsed. Was it because there was no air? Was it because no energy was left in my body? I stared up at the clouded sky. I knew that everything around me was burned up, the many shriveled people littering the ground, so my only escape was to look into the sky. The dark clouds loomed overhead, telling me it would rain soon. That's good. The fire will be put out once it rains. I said to myself that it hurt. I'd said so on behalf of all people who couldn't even say so, human and bioroid construct alike. The crackling sound popped in my ear canal, followed by a soft hum, as though my systems were rebooting. My vision filled with white noise until an indicator appeared on my field over to the right. The image was broken and barely visible, but a voice finally pushed through.
You know, this is probably the last time you'll be able to get away with hacking the uplink.
Hey, you know what they say, you only live once. The irony wasn't lost on either of us, I'm sure.
Help us set things right, Key. We've been tailing you for a bit, and I'm sure you're sick of body hopping, aren't you?
It was in my nature to be suspicious. That was what Dr. Lawrence had said of me after I was moved to the recovery ward after waking up all those years ago. Even though I was still a child when I died the first time, I had refused to even eat or drink anything before it had been tested, and I wouldn't dare put medication in my mouth. My suspicion had begun to ebb over the years, taking in those who had come and gone as a minor thing since I was still young and extremely focused on adjusting to my adult body at the age of 11. This was the 5th body I'd hacked and stolen from somebody else. I'm not even sure I remembered what I looked like anymore. I rarely stayed in a body for the full 20 years. I was a pretty desirable head in the bounty hunter circles, but no one could accurately pin me down. Not since I figured out how to hack the uplink and take whatever my body wanted. What's in it for me? I ducked into a nearby shed so I could scope out my new body. These moments were always random. The last body I hacked was a young girl who'd gotten killed in a back alley late at night after a night of partying and drinking with the wrong crowd. My human body died a long time ago. What else is there other than these shells?
You'll find true peace, free of the uplink, free from running and hiding, freedom from it all.
Was I tired of living like this? Of course I was. But dying and having my data floating around in the uplink where anyone could hijack it and put me into another body, or even take bits and pieces of my life and implant it elsewhere? I'd never be able to die in peace. I'd never be free. At least when I hacked the uplink, all of my stuff was intact and I put it back together on my terms. You're saying you'll be able to erase me? For good?
Yes, for good.
No bullshit?
No bullshit.
I wasn't buying it. Not all of it, anyway.
If that's what you want, then we'll purge your data from the uplink so you can have a true death. Or you can join us and help us free others like you.
Otherwise, my information is free to be filtered with and toyed? Is that what you're saying?
You know the answer to that better than anyone, Key.
Honestly, what did I have to lose? No more than what I already had. I want to be erased.
As you wish.
And unlike the many times before, I saw a white void instead of the endless darkness that accompanied me shutting down and rebooting my systems into a new shell. There was nothing to tickle the sensors to life. I was almost positive that I no longer had a body. On the other end of the void, a lone figure stood, an individual comprised of numbers and symbols that were clustered together in the body of a human. It reached its hand out to me, and I reached out as well. My own limbs a mass of numbers and symbols. Pure data.
Cease function.
My name is Key. I'm 95 seconds old. Today is the first and last time I've been freed.
That was good.
Yay! Yep, that's the one that I did for the competition. I don't know if I got in it. Whatever. They were kind of like, you can't publish this anywhere until we can, we get 90 days first rights or something. I'm like, well, you guys haven't said anything to me in a while, so I'm just going to go ahead and put this out on the internet. Whatever.
If you get sued, it's not my fault.
That's right. It's nobody's fault. Nobody's. What is going on? Oh, apparently Haley's writing a freaking.
What the fuck?
Oh my god, we've summoned Cthulhu. Shit.
Well, okay.
Here, let me do a dramatic reading of Haley Young's creepypasta so far.
Oh god.
Opens with wolf howls and a thunder effect. Eden paced up and down her kitchen in deep despair. The noodles were gone. The nuts were gone. All gone. And the goddamn shop was shut. Her mind was screaming. I can't. The world was turning black. The walls began to pulse in rhythm with her racing heart. Where the fuck is the next one? A deafening ripping sound screeched out as a monstrous crack began to scrape into existence. No, but it was too late. The void had opened up and Eden was staring into it. Cthulhu stared back at her.
Ah, another little human has peeped into my doorway.
Oh damn.
Jeez. guys. My lack of noodles and nuts has caused Cthulhu to show up.
Yep.
Okay, that's it. You need to stop eating nuts immediately.
No, my pistachios!
No more pistachios. If you run out of things that you can't eat, suddenly, he who shall not be named shows up. No more nuts for you.
No, my sweet pistachios!
Not just a demon. No, not just the demon, not the devil, no freaking Cthulhu. Really? No, absolutely not.
Oh, sweet sea monster from the depths of hell!
Oh, wow.
Let me have my nuts!
You can have my nut.
Jeez.
Is venom. Oh,
Now it's turned into a fucking porno.
Now the theme is taking a turn, Lord.
Bow chicka bow bow.
That voice though.
Yep, that voice though.
Just,
Sound like fucking. You sound like fucking like the Claw from Inspector Gadget.
Thank you. I was getting
From what?
ready.
You sound like the Claw from Inspector. Oh, next time, Gadget. Like that's what you sound like.
I don't think I've.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, we're kind of old school.
heard or never seen? There's a difference.
Have you never seen Inspector Gadget?
I saw a couple episodes.
Okay.
young.
Yeah, so
Very
yeah,
young.
you
I
were
don't
like the
remember
Claw.
seeing
He's like always sitting behind the chair and he's like petting his little cat with his little metal hand going like, next time, Gadget. I'll get you next time, Gadget. Like that. He's really creepy. It's really great. Or you sound like Mum Ra
What?
from Thundercats. Mum Ra.
You're showing your age.
I don't give a shit if I'm showing my age. I am 31 years old and I am proud to embrace this. We were just talking about this today. I love the victory song from the Seven Swords. This is this Chinese version of like the Seven Samurai. And it's so good. That song is so good. And then we were talking about like all the different stuff about that time. We talked about the 50s or 60s movie that was a black and white film that came out, the original Akira Kurosawa film. And yeah, and so I was like, and then I told her, she's like, we're showing our age because it's so old. And I was like, we weren't even born then. How can you
know?
like, what the fuck? Like, how could we be showing our age when we weren't even born then? That's like, and then I told her the analogy. What did I say, Tommy? I think I said, hold on, let me scroll up. Let me scroll up in this fucking conversation. Yes. Okay. So she said, I was like, you can't claim that we're showing our age when we weren't even born then. That's like some kid born in 2000s seeing Lion King, the animated film, or not knowing what the shutter click sounds means when taking a picture.
Oh God. Or when they see a floppy disk for the first time, they're like, hey, it's the save icon.
They don't even know. I know, right? It's the save icon, really?
It's real. What the?
And it's like, what? Or they don't know what a rotary phone sound is. Like, what's that? Why does it sound like that? Or what a rotary phone looks like?
Did you see the video? There was a video of like a parent trying to get her daughter to call her mom using a rotary phone, and she picked it up and did not know how to use the rotary portion of the phone. They were pressing inside the holes, like the buttons were like it doesn't light up. Like they were legit, like just they had no idea how to use this rotary phone, and whoever was recording was having the time of their life.
Okay, my question is, okay, so people keep saying, like, Jack keeps making this thing saying that I sound like a drunk 6-year-old. How do you know what a drunk 6-year-old sound like? Have you met any 6-year-olds that have been drunk?
Yes, I am curious.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. Like, have you met a drunk 6-year-old to accurately, like, can you?
What kind of childhood this guy had?
Well, that's my thing. It's like, I want to know, why do I sound like a drunk 6-year-old? Because I'm pretty sure drunk people, like, slur their words. And they don't sound like they know what the fuck they're talking about. My words are pretty fast. So I'm just curious, how does a 6-year-old drunk sound? I'm pretty sure that's not what I sound like. Yeah, thank you. A lot of goo goo gaga, whatever. Can't even get your sentences put together right.
I said 6, not 6 more.
Hey, I'm just saying.
Oh, wow. If a 6-year-old could slur words, I guess.
Exactly. So I'm
They
just
already do,
curious.
so it
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
exactly. So I'm just kind of like pretty sure I'm not slurring my words here. Just curious how that is an accurate description of what my voice sounds like. But whatever.
6-year-old is drunk in Ireland.
No, that's Germany.
Oh, what?
Hey, apparently in Germany it's legal to drink when you're 14.
Okay.
Hey, John
Yeah,
Popa.
that's true.
He pled the fifth.
Well, that automatically means you're guilty, which means you're going around getting 6-year-olds drunk, and I do not approve of this lifestyle that you're living.
Or was once a drunk 6-year-old yourself, so there.
Hey, Harry, what's up?
Well, we shut up real quick. Okay.
Oh no, I was just waiting on Harry to ask me the question. Last time I seen a video where a parent let her 6-year-old play on his old Game Boy Color, and she was like, the touchscreen not working.
Sweet summer children that are unaware that touchscreen was not always an option.
I love pistachios. You guys don't understand. This shit's my life.
I hate the bad pistachios though.
Oh
Like, the
yeah.
ones that just taste like burnt death.
Right, like but that's that's why you look at them before you eat them. If they look brown and burnt, you don't eat them.
My fucking pistachios.
Oh, my neck. Oh. I have a Commodore 64.
neck.
I used to have a Commodore 64 that still worked. The printer and everything sounded like the computer from HAL 9000 in 2001 Space Odyssey when it was printing out shit with the paper that had like the little circles on the ends of it. Yeah, and then you like tear the edges off of it. Yeah, exactly.
The dot matrix printer.
I know. Yeah, and I was like, it sounded like that when it printed. I was like, oh my god, I feel like my computer's gonna. That's what it had. It sounded just like that.
I don't know what kind of dot matrix printer you had that sounded like that. The ones that I've seen are just like.
Jeez, God. Mine was really nice sounding, but it was crazy. Unit designated EDEN activation code 5529-B. Objective kill Harry Reeds. What?
It said
He forgot his question.
It stands
I was like,
basically like I forgot what I was gonna ask. Just tell me.
what is that? Oh, hey, Robin. Yeah, unfortunately, Audie, I do have a weakness for the salted ones, but lightly salted. Lightly salted.
That's what he said.
No, that's what I said. Then what? Oh my god.
Alrighty then.
Oh my Lanta. Okay. Woo, shit. Drop my.
What is Lanta?
Huh? Lanta?
What is Lanta?
My
You keep
Lanta?
saying, oh my Lanta. What does
My
that mean?
Lanta is a drug.
Yeah, it's the stuff that calms wow.
Okay. That makes more sense.
It's the stuff that calms your stomach or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I get
Yep.
it.
Oh my Lanta.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
That I don't think I've ever heard of that. I have acid reflux. Why don't I like whatever?
Why don't you know about that?
Yeah.
Well, now you do.
I guess so.
The
Mhm.
more you know.
What's the active ingredient?
Putting people in timeout. Timeout.
Who's going in timeout?
Everybody.
Uh-oh.
Oh, well, shit. Rude.
Now,
Aluminum hydroxide
guys.
and magnesium hydroxide. Okay. It's not the stuff that I have. Right. Sorry, I'm a medical nerd.
I have a new Rick and Morty purse. It's really cute. Or it's like a wallet thing. I need to put all my stuff in here though before I go on vacation. Anyway. Alright, so we have 2 stories left. We can either read Aokigahara Diary or The Strangers.
I'm gonna be ducking out soon. So
Aww.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that. chat before you start another story. There's one more to say.
Okay. Aw,
Sorry,
Pooh.
guys. I got things to do.
Pooh. What do you have? What? It's holiday time. What are you doing?
I'm fucking working.
Oh yeah, that's right. You have a job.
I'm in college.
So,
I don't get a break. I don't get a break from my work.
well, sometimes you do, but they're little mini breaks.
Yeah, that's what this has been.
A mini break. Okay.
That's an exam to study for.
Oh, Pooh. Jesus. All right. Well, it was good
Well, I'll
having
see guys later.
you.
Thank you guys for having me. It was fun. I'm
No
gonna pull up
problem.
my YouTube channel if that's okay.
No, that's good. Go ahead. Put it in the chat. Let everybody know.
There you go.
Everyone, subscribe. Follow him. Do all the things. Shameless
See you
plug.
guys later.
Bye.
Later.
All right. I'm going to call you back, Tommy, on our separate thing.
All right.
All right. Bye. Alrighty. Do-do-do. Oh my gosh, if you guys sent me a lifetime supply of pistachios, I would love you guys forever.
Oh my god.
My sweet pistachios. Seriously, I love pistachios. They're so good. Okay. So, next we have The Strangers and Aokigahara Diary. Now, this one's a diary entry, like a journal entry one. It's kind of okay. It's not that great, from what I've been listening to for the reviews. Now, the stranger story, you'd get to help me, Tommy, because there's dialogue in here. It's kind of long, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do they want to hear? I mean, if the other one is not that good based on the reviews.
Well, I'm just reading some of the comments, and they're just like, it's an okay story. There were no shortage of typos and misplaced words. Some parts of the story dropped off. It's like, I don't know the cost of travel from your country to Cham, but I think it's more than $600. Story's a nice read. Diary journal format worked to camo some of the stuttering of the story. It says well written. Some of them are just kind of very nice, but in Japan they don't eat scorpions. What?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then someone was just like, to hell with grammar. Let's talk logic first. Someone left a
Okay,
big
you
old
know
long
what?
comment. I'm like, yeah, let's just not even read this.
You know what? Let's not go there.
Let's just not even go there.
Yeah, no. One of the comments is just like logic. It's like, okay.
Hey, two geeky gamers. How are you doing? Alright, so I guess we're going to do The Strangers then. I'll go ahead and put the chat, or put I'll put the story link in the thing, in the chat, and you guys can read with me as we read aloud. I need to find my music. Find a good long one. I need a long one. Ooh, that's unsettling, but it's too early for that.
I don't know. From the look of this, it might not be.
Well, it's too early for that. Like for the unsettling noise to be coming in like that. It's too early. Okay, we can do this one. It's from Higanbana, the song I'm about to play. I dare them to flag me again, and I'll be like, look.
Can we not do that? Can we not get flagged?
Yeah, well, fuck it. Night of the Noodleless Nut Job featuring Shrimp.
What in the world?
Hi, Khadijah.
Eden and frozen cars.
Oh, Jesus. Because of the picture of my car covered in snow. All right. Ooh, that's not good. Every time I hear that song, I think about Miss Marnie's Tea House.
An oldie but a goodie.
It's so good. That's got to be one of my favorite stories I've ever narrated, other than the break room incident. All right, here we go. My name is Andrew Eriks. I lived once in a city called New York. My mother is Terry Eriks. She's in the phone book. If you know the city and you read this, find her. Don't show her this, but tell her I love her and that I'm trying to come home. Please. It all started when I decided around the time that I turned 25 that it was time for me to give up taking my backpack into work. It would make me look more mature, I thought, if I weren't lugging around a book bag everywhere like a high school student. Of course, this meant that I had to give up reading in the subway in the mornings and afternoons since I couldn't quite fit my paperbacks into a pocket. A briefcase would have been out of line since I was working in a factory, and messenger bags always seemed a little, I don't know, fruity to me, too purse-like for my liking. I had an MP3 player which helped pass the time for a while, but when it broke, I would shut down at the end of every song if I didn't skip to the next track manually. I gave that up too. So, every morning I'd sit in the metro for a half hour that dragged on endlessly, with nothing at all to do but watch my fellow passengers. I was slightly shy, so I didn't like to be caught at it, so I'd surreptitiously watch people. Interestingly enough, I quickly discovered that I wasn't the only person in the world who was uncomfortable in public. People covered it up in various ways, but I learned to see through them. I divided them up into categories in my head. There were the fidgeters who couldn't get comfortable, constantly moving their hands, shifting their weight, moving their legs closer to the bench then further. They were the most noticeably nervous types. After them were the fake sleepers, who'd take their seat and practically close their eyes in the same second. Most of them weren't really sleeping, though. The real sleepers shifted more, came awake suddenly at stops or after loud noises. The fakes just zoned from the second they sat until the moment the train pulled into their stop. Then there were the MP3 player addicts, the occasional laptop people, the people who traveled in groups and talked too loudly. The cell phone junkies were either very popular or just completely unable to shut up for more than 2 minutes at a time. Just as people watching was threatening to get unbearably boring, I found my first incongruity. A middle-aged looking man, brown-haired, average size and weight, and dressed casually. Oddly enough, he seemed almost too normal. He had no remarkable features, no mannerisms, as if he were designed to fade into a crowd. It was that which led me to notice him. I was intentionally trying to see how people acted on the subway, and he didn't act at all. Didn't even react either. It was like seeing someone sitting in front of the television watching a documentary about fish. They aren't excited, aren't engaged, but they aren't looking away either. Present, but not accounted for. He was on the subway in the afternoons. It was more than a month into the people watching experiment before he caught my eye, because I didn't catch the same subway every day, and didn't consciously sit in the same car when I did. I saw him for the first time on a Monday, I believe, and for the second time on the Thursday of the same week. He obviously did catch the same train and sat in the same car, in the same seat even. OCD much? I thought at the time. Since he caught my attention so much the first time, I watched him more avidly the next. He was, frankly, downright unsettling. He didn't do anything at all. He sat there, expressionless, head straight, no matter what happened. A woman with a wailing child entered the car and sat right behind him, and still nothing. He didn't so much as turn his head around or frowned in annoyance, and that kid was fucking loud, too. By the time the subway reached my stop, I found myself queasy, and when I exited the car, my hands were shaking like I was having a nicotine fit. Something about that man was wrong. He was, I thought, some kind of freak, sociopath, maybe one of those quiet guys who it turns out has a dozen women's heads in his freezer, the first victim his mother. I found myself intentionally dawdling after work in the afternoons, stopping to browse in kiosks in the mall near the subway, even when I didn't intend on buying anything. For a couple of weeks, I avoided catching that subway, and when I found myself at the stop when it was pulling in, I made sure to choose a train car as far from the one I'd seen him in as possible. Then, one morning, I saw another person who set off the same warning bells in my head. A woman, just as plain looking, just as out of place in the hustle and commotion around her. The moment I recognized her, I realized later was when my obsession began. My people watching, which had begun as a bit of a hobby to stave off boredom, became something of a religion to me. I couldn't enter a subway or ride a bus without finding myself examining everyone, filling out a mental checklist in my head. Plain clothes of solid colors, no brands? Check. No expressions, no casual glances out of the windows or towards other passengers? Check. No bags, purses, or accessories? Check, 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 check. We've got another. I started calling them the strangers. I didn't see them every day, even after I started taking the metro more than I needed to, even when I found myself riding buses out of my way in the evenings. But they were there, often enough. Seeing one would set my teeth on edge, make my palms sweaty and my throat feel dry. If you've ever given a speech, you might recognize the feeling. Even though they didn't pay me the slightest bit of attention, I felt like I was on display for them. I could see them plain as day. How could they miss me? They didn't, though. Not in any way that I could tell. And when eventually my curiosity overpowered my fear, I decided to follow one. I chose the one that I'd found first, the man in the afternoon subway who always kept the same seat. I got on and took a seat behind him. We rode to the end of the line, and he rose and walked out before I did. Keeping distance between us, I tailed him, but he didn't go far. He took a seat on a nearby bench, as expressionless as always, and I turned a corner and waited, trying to look nonchalant. After a few minutes, the next metro arrived, and I watched him enter it and saw him take the same seat. I couldn't find the nerve to follow him again. He hadn't gone anywhere. He just rode the metro to the end of the line and then what? Rode it back? What possible reason would anyone have for that? It nagged me long after I'd rode a later train back home and tried to get some rest. I couldn't leave it alone. Not until I could make some sense of it. I found myself more than confused. I was downright angry now. Why was this uncanny bastard, this almost inhuman person, riding subway trains back and forth, going nowhere? The mind I once read recoils from certain things because the very sight of them is an affront. Spiders set it off in a lot of people, particularly great big ones. It just looked wrong to us, alien. That was the effect the strangers were beginning to have on me. They offended my senses. I followed him again the next day, and again the day after that. Every day for at least a week, the two of us made our silent trips together, though only I knew it. By the end of the week, I was following him for hours until the last train that stopped at near my apartment block that night. We rode from one end of the city to the other and back again. I wasn't people watching anymore. I was person watching, stranger watching. I didn't have eyes for anyone else, though peripherally I noticed more than a few confused glances sent my way. Other than that, we two might have been the only two people on the planet for all I cared. I lost my job the next week. My manager was kind and timid but firm. I wasn't concentrating. I had no focus. Wasn't being anywhere near productive. It was actually quite a speech, I think, but I could barely hear it. All I could think about was my new work, my vigil. What would that man, no, that thing on the subway get up to when I wasn't there to keep an eye on him? I left for work for the last time at noon that day. Normally I'd have started tailing my subject at 5:30, but I was sure that he'd be waiting for me. I wish now that I'd paid more attention to that day. Was it sunny? It was summer after all. I could have walked around downtown, maybe checked out a few pretty girls. Could have had an iced cappuccino and a smoke at an outdoor cafe and then gone home, put my growing obsession out of my head, found a new job and taken to reading on trains and buses again. Instead, I waited. More than one train goes up and down the lines, so I sat in the station for at least an hour until I saw him through a window. I walked into the subway car and I noticed that for the first time my skin wasn't clammy. My hands weren't shaking and my heart wasn't pounding hard. I sat for the first time right across from him, directly in his line of sight, watched for a change in his face. Would he recognize me? If he did, I saw no sign of it. And I was looking hard. We must have made quite a pair sitting across from one another that afternoon, staring at and into one another. It was hard not to let the building in rage contort my face, but with effort I was able to keep as still and as expressionless at him. Inside, I practically screamed at him, "React to me, you fucking asshole! See me, damn it! I know you for what you are!" I didn't, though, and my silent demands weren't answered. Not the first trip around, or the second, or the third, or the 10th. We rode far into the night together, and at each terminus we got out together and waited. I sat right beside him on the bench, watching him from the corner of my eye, and still got nothing from him. But two could play that game as well as one. Finally, we made our last trip together. I had him and knew it. Last trip of the night before the train stopped running. I'd always let him get away from me at that point because the end of the line is a long way from my home, and the buses stopped running at the same time as the subways. But this time, I'd follow him, finally see what he was when the train stopped running. I'd get some answers, maybe. The subway rolled on, and the anticipation grew in me. The car emptied out around us slowly until it was just we two silent watchers below the city. I fought to keep a manic grin at bay, and the subway train slowed to a crawl, then stopped. The end of the line. The stranger didn't move. Still didn't react at all. The car stood still, doors open. I could dimly hear the last few stragglers making their way out of the station somewhere behind us, footsteps echoing the silence. Nothing. The speaker systems dinged to let anyone half asleep know that we'd reached the terminus. Still nothing. And finally, I could hear footsteps again. A conductor or something popping his head into each car to make sure it was empty before taking the train wherever the hell it goes for the night. I didn't take my eyes from my silent quarry. I managed to see the conductor from the corner of my eye when he finally reached our car. He looked in, his eyes roamed over us, and a puzzled look came over his face. He blinked a few times and paused. I waited for him to speak, and the moment stretched out, but then, with a silent shake of the head, he left us. There was a car ahead of ours, and I heard him stop to check that too, and then a few minutes later, the train started up again. We rode for a time and then looped around and the subway was parked. I could see into the windows of more trains on either side of us and through their opposing windows into even more. And then he smiled at me. It was just a small curl of the lip that would have gone unnoticed if I hadn't spent the last several hours studying his face.
So,
He said in a rough baritone.
here we are.
I tried to respond but couldn't right away. My throat had clamped shut. Terror filled me. It felt like the whole underground cavern we were in had just collapsed onto me. I coughed and stammered and finally managed with a raspy voice to ask the question that had kept me up at night, drove me halfway to madness, and led me to this place and this moment. What are you? He ignored me. He stood and the train doors opened. Then, shockingly, he turned to face me.
Coming.
He didn't wait for an answer, but walked out onto the platform. I scrambled to follow. "Come on, damn it," I shouted. "Talk to me! Who are you? What? Why do you ride the metro all fucking day?" He didn't look back at me, or slow his step. I couldn't see his face, but it's safe to guess that he didn't react at all, no more than he had to anything else. I stalked after him, still shouting for a time, but eventually gave up. 5 words was all I was going to get out of him, I guessed. We walked along the platform until we came to a junction, then turned. Now we were perpendicular to the trains around us. The path ahead was lit from above, but I couldn't see where it ended. The trains on either side of us went on forever, as far as I could tell. Far too many trains to service one city, I realized. It wouldn't have mattered by then, I figure, but I probably should have paid more attention to that at the time. I'm not sure how long we walked. I had a watch once, but it broke. I took out my cell phone at one point, but got no reception down there, and all it would show me was no signal. The stranger would stop every now and then and look at a subway car for a minute or two, but then pass on. It took me a while to figure out why, but eventually I saw that they weren't all the same. Long lines of them would be similar, and then we'd come to a different model. It'd be a little larger or smaller or have a slightly different shape. The cockpits, or whatever you call the front part where the conductor sits, were superficially different as well. I didn't, and I don't know why exactly he was looking for, but eventually he must have found it because we turned again and the subway doors opened when my impromptu guide stopped in front of them. We entered and took our seats. "Are you willing to speak now?" I asked him. No answer. I sighed with frustration and seriously weighed the pros and cons of punching him right in the face for a time, when suddenly the lights in the car came on and I heard the engine start up. "What the fuck?" He gave me a look that was almost sad.
You're not going to be able to go back.
"What are you talking about? Go back where?" Nothing again. The stone walling asshole! The train lurched into motion, pushing off into the opposite direction than the one we came from, I think. The endless parade of them had thrown off my sense of direction. It rolled for a few minutes and then began to slow as we approached the stop. His vacant gaze grew sharper, and for the first time, I got the sense that he was actually staring at me rather than just looking in the direction I happened to be in.
Be still. Be silent. Don't catch their attention.
The train stopped, the doors opened, and they began to flood in. I don't know what I noticed first. The weird clothes, the two long arms with hands that almost brushed the floor, the jet black eyes and angular faces with the blue-gray hue of their skin. My eyes took in all those stimuli, but for a long second, my brain refused to process it, and when it finally did, I was barely able to bite down on the shriek that tried to tear its way from my throat. I thought my heart was going to explode. Hell, I thought I was going to explode. I was like a strummed guitar string. Everything in me lurched and throbbed. My sight grew dizzy, which I was thankful for, and I vomited. My mouth was clenched shut, and I forced myself to swallow it, barely managing it. My instincts were screaming his words at me. Be still. Be silent. Don't catch their attention. That day is a blur. We rode the subway car up and down the line, still and expressionless, for hours, for days perhaps. It seemed much longer than the line I knew, the line I'd followed the stranger along. The hideous things around us seemed to pay us no undue attention, though we must have stood out fiercely. I was so petrified with fear that when we finally returned to the endless cavern of trains, alone, I burst into tears. I collapsed to the floor and just sobbed for a long time, the stranger watching impassively. When I gained control of myself, I looked at him imploringly. "Take me home," I croaked out. "Please."
I can't.
He told me.
Don't know which one of these would lead you back, if any of them do.
He stood and walked out onto the platform, and I rose wearily and followed him. He spun around sharply.
I think you followed me enough.
The rage I'd felt for him before, the panic had temporarily buried, rose up in me. "What?" I screamed, rushing forward. I grabbed him by the shoulders and with a burst of insane strength I didn't even know was in me, slammed him up against the side of a metro car. "You fucking son of a bitch! What the fuck did you do to me?" I slammed him again and again. "Take me back!" He bore it all passively, and soon the flare of anger in me guttered out, leaving me hollow. "Please," I begged, "please take me home."
That's not how it works.
He said.
If we stay together, it's more likely that we'll be noticed. Go your own way. Be still and be subtle, and they'll think that you're one of theirs.
"How could you do this to me? Why?" He gave me another almost sad look.
I had to. You will too. You get stuck sometimes.
He brushed my hands off his shoulders and turned to walk away. I fell to my knees, suddenly out of strength, and watched him leave. At the junction, he turned back to face me,
I'm sorry.
and then he was gone. I stayed there on the cold tiles for a very long time. I curled up into a ball and wept for a while. After there weren't any tears left in me, I even managed to get some sleep. When I awoke, the subway train I'd come in was gone, off carrying more blue-gray abominations to wherever blue-gray abominations go. I couldn't handle going back there anyways. I tried to find my way back to where I'd started, to find a subway that I recognized, but I wasn't even sure which direction I should have been going in anymore. I walked for an hour, then another. Finally, I found one that might have looked familiar. Or I was desperate enough to imagine that it did. When I stepped up to the door, it opened for me, and I took a seat. It started up, and in spite of being a lifelong agnostic, I prayed my heart out. The train slowed to a stop, the doors opened, and for a second I thought I was saved. People, human beings. I'd be the most devout man in the world. Then I noticed the eyes, specifically the third large eye in the center of their foreheads. Well, fuck you then, God, I thought. They were easier to take than the last bunch, though, and I was thankful for that. The third eye blinked independently of the other two, though, and that was nauseating. And when one of them smiled or laughed or spoke with another, I couldn't help but notice that their teeth were sharp and misshapen, and yellow-green with filth. But if I was careful and selectively blind, I could pretend for a stretch that I was home, until one of them entered with a sandwich in hand, and I realized with a start that I was starving and hadn't eaten or drank in what must have been days. The next terminus I came to, I decided to try and find something to eat or drink. I don't know why I waited, but it seemed important to ride to the end of the line. I got there and could barely bring myself to leave. I had never seen the stranger leave the underground. I had never seen him eat or drink either. My stomach would not take no for an answer, though. I steeled myself and tried to keep my face carefully neutral and made my way out into the station proper. And then I got confused. I was looking for escalators or stairs or something like that, but all I saw were holes in the ground, the walls and the ceiling, gaping, irregularly sized holes like I was in the middle of a beehive. What was I supposed to do? Leap into one? Didn't make any sense to me, not until someone came through one. He floated up through the floor and then floated by me. He frowned for a second, or at least I think it was probably a frown, but apparently whatever kept them from recognizing me as alien in the subway extended at least this far. It did not, unfortunately, allow me to levitate, which seemed to be the only way out of the subway station beehive thing. Swearing, I made my way back down to the tunnel. I was angry, lost, starving, and I'd been abandoned to a fate that, if it wasn't worse than hell, was at least twice as stupid and 3 times as nonsensical. I was not in the best frame of mind, which I feel excuses the mistake. Normally, I take corners with a wide berth because everyone knows that if you just dart around a corner sharply in a public place, chances are decent that you're going to walk right into someone. As I did, I slammed into someone, a woman, and fell to the ground. Without thinking, I reacted like any New Yorker would, badly. Jesus fuck, you stupid bitch! Watch where you're going! I realized my mistake even before she did. Her eyes grew quizzical and confused, and when she really noticed me, they bulged with horror. She leaped, floated quickly, back from me and let out something scream-like. A little more yowly than I was used to, but I got the point. Further down the tunnel, I saw alien 3-eyed heads turning toward us. I thought suddenly about all those sharp, filthy teeth, and just like that, I was running. The subway train wasn't there, but there was a walkway along the tunnel for the repairman, I assume. That's who'd use it, where I'm from anyways. I took it at full speed and just kept running until each breath felt like getting stabbed. I stopped, panting, and looked back. The tunnel had curved, so I couldn't see the light any longer, but nobody appeared to be following me. Going back, though, was not an option. I continued forward in the dark for a long time. Eventually, I came to a small opening in the wall and stopped there for a rest. Hunger, despair, and a full-speed, terrified run had all left me absolutely drained. I probably would have wept again, which seemed to be all I was capable of lately, but it just seemed like too much work. I sat against the wall, legs splayed out, and imagined I was beating the bastard stranger to death with a hammer. It was a relieving image. A rat was shuffling around nearby in the dark. Every so often, I would kick out a foot to scare away. But after a time, I didn't even bother with that. Rabies or any other disease I might be carrying would be a blessing compared to endless traveling through the subways of strange worlds, lost, destitute, and alone. When it crept near me again, I didn't shoo it off. Even when it reached and pressed against my leg, I couldn't bring myself to care. Not until a train passed by, and the lights of its cars lit up the culvert I was in, and the thing that I had thought was a rat. It was rat-like, yes, but not as much as it was spider-like. If someone had bred the two of them together, the resulting abomination might have been almost as horrible as the thing nuzzling my leg. I shrieked, flung myself up from the floor, and booted it like a soccer player would right into the opposite wall. Its back made a sickening crunch, and I watched it twitch out its last before the final car passed and the darkness returned. And in the darkness, a terrible thought came to me. I wondered if it was edible. I didn't want to, and I gagged just imagining it, but I was hungry, and there was no guarantee that I'd be able to find food in this place. Or ever again. Rat spider was my only option. I held off as long as I could, but in the end, survival trumped squeamishness. I had my lighter, but nothing to light on fire. I picked meat off its carcass and cooked it a little by holding it over the flame. But it didn't help much. Nothing could have. Its meat was foul, more foul than anything you can imagine. I've been that desperate for food since, and eaten many other questionable things, but nothing has been as bad as that rat spider was. In retrospect, that is when I became a stranger. Before I'd struggled to reach that expressionless state the other had maintained. What I'd taken for calm was numbness. A sharp rock thrown in a river will, over time, have its edges rounded off by the water beating over it, and what I'd gone through had done the same. Tearing up and eating a monster in the dark below an alien world, the last of my edges smoothed. By the time I left the darkness and came back into the tunnel, I was as expressionless and empty as the one who led me here and had ever been. That was not the worst of it, though. The worst came later, the first time I got stuck. The stranger had mentioned it, but in the state I'd been in, I had hardly noticed. One night, at the end of the line, I was asked to leave the train. The world was one of the closer to normal ones. The people were almost human as I recognized it. They were orange, sure, and hunchbacked, but other than that, they were practically normal. After the last world, where the people had been hideously overweight, six-breasted hermaphrodites with no noses, the orange guys were pretty much beautiful to me. I thought at first that the conductor was talking to someone else, but I was the only one in the car, and moreover, I understood him. The oranges certainly hadn't been speaking English all day, but nonetheless, I could understand what he was saying. When I stood, I began to realize why. I couldn't stand up straight. I was hunchbacked, and as I saw in my reflection against the window as I exited, orange. I pieced together the rest from there. Stuck meant that I was trapped in this world for some reason and stuck looking like them as well. Which would be handy if I wanted to take the opportunity to leave the subway, which is possible most times, but requires a lot of care and is quite overwhelming. Alien worlds are a little revolting, I've found. You try to compare them to your own, but the differences are so vast that it just makes you sick. I left that subway, anyways, because it was clear I wasn't returning to the central hub, what I'd taken to calling the infinite line of subway trains that night. Or any other night, I soon found out. Whatever had let me go unnoticed wasn't working any longer. I considered briefly staying, but this place wasn't home and could never be. Even if they looked like me, their culture was bound to be different. That was a lesson I'd learned before. Even worlds where the people are absolutely indistinguishable from me are fraught with danger. I I was once on a world where the people looked just like me. Well, actually a little Brazilian, but that was more than close enough. And learned the hard way that the gesture that to me means hello means something gravely insulting. Insulting enough that I'd been beaten half to death while a crowd looked on with approval. Besides, even if that place had a culture I could fake, I didn't want to stay. I wanted one of two things, to find my way home or to find the stranger who'd set me on this path and beat the shit out of him. Nothing else would do. So I wanted to move on. I wasn't sure, though, if I could do to some poor sucker what had been done to me. Could I really force someone else to wander the eternal underground like me? It turned out I didn't have to. After a few months, one of them did notice me, yes, and began to follow me for weeks. I very carefully made it seem like I hadn't seen him, just like the stranger had. But I was torn between the desire to warn him away and the desire to bring him to the end of the line so I could leave his dismal world already. The last night, he followed me to the end of the line, just as I had once done. He hadn't managed to work up the nerve to sit right across from me, though, and as soon as the train stopped at the terminus, he rushed off. I waited, hoping the conductor wouldn't see me and I could continue on, but to no avail. I left the car and the metro rushed off without me, and I cursed inside. As I walked around the corner towards the ticket booths, the young man who'd been following me attacked. He had a wicked curved knife and should have caught me by surprise, but I've been traveling through hostile alien worlds for several years. My reflexes were sharp. We struggled viciously before I managed to wrestle the knife from him. I don't know how it got in his neck. I don't think I wanted to kill him. I hadn't even been that angry, remembering my own building rage from so long before. Afterwards, as he lay there, bled out, I got pissed. I kicked him repeatedly, shouting, "You dick! You were supposed to..." Kick, to follow me! Kick. I fled the scene of the crime, but not for long. I was there bright and early the next day to catch the first subway of the morning, and that night, when I rode it to the end of the line, I was invisible to the conductor again. I guess you can either kill them or bring them with you if you want to return to the central hub. I was invisible again, but I was also orange and hunchback still. I stayed that way until the next time I became stuck, the next time I killed. That one went much faster. I didn't wait for her to follow me. Once I was recognized as a stranger, I recognized her as the next one, and I made my choice. I won't bring anyone else into this. It makes me wonder, though, about the stranger who inducted me. I wonder what he originally looked like, and whether he knew he could have killed me. I wonder, too, about the others I saw back home, and the rare few I come across since I left. Do they kill them, or take them? We're damned either way. And whichever one they choose, do they consider it a mercy? I can't bring myself to talk to them to ask. We're damned either way, and the damned should suffer in solitude. I've killed 15 of them now, and I've gotten very good at it. But I've made a decision. I am done killing. Innocents, at least. Before I returned to the central hub, I filled a backpack with as much paper as I could cram into it, and I wrote this story, over and over again, to be left in as many subway trains as I can. Couple thousand messages and bottles cast into a sea of steel rails. This is a request and a warning. My request above was that you find my mother and tell her a lie. It's a white lie, don't worry. Tell my mother that I love her and that I am trying to come home. It may give her some hope or a small measure of peace. I wish it were true too. But here's the thing. I've been thinking of myself as like Odysseus, and lost and adrift, looking to return to familiar shores. But I am not lost at sea. I am lost in endless tunnels, the labyrinth. The difference is important, because labyrinths are designed, built. Somebody or something made this impossible place, and they must be held accountable for what they've done to me. They cast me as Theseus, not Odysseus. But I won't play that part any longer either. The strange rules of this place have turned me from the human I began as into something else, then something else again. They have made me a monster, and so I will be the minotaur of this labyrinth. And if I can, I will tear it down around me and destroy those that built it. My warning is that you should be very wary in public places of silent, expressionless men and women. Keep your distance. They may kill you, or they may do worse. If you see them, run far and fast. And even more importantly, I warn you, I beg you, don't ride the train to the end of the line. Woo! Man.
That was creepy.
That was really good. I think I'm going to actually
really
I'm going to read that again for like my channel and put like visuals and sound effects and stuff on it. That was really good.
That was creepy as hell.
Oh my god, my throat. Are y'all talking about pistachio plushies?
Shh, you see nothing.
I see it all.
It's just a figment of your imagination. There's nothing we're talking about. Nothing.
Pistachio plushies. They're so cute. I want one. No, that's adorable. But yeah, no, that was really good.
Yeah, two geeky gamers. That was the end of it. That was really good. That was really creepy.
Yeah, it is over. It was really good. Yeah, I agree. That was awesome. Okay, well, here I am talking about I'm going to stream for 1 hour. It has been 2 hours I've been streaming. But yeah, so guys, I'm going to call it for right now. Oh, where's my music? I need to do my little my outie music. Where is a good one? I need a good one. A happy one. I need a happy one. We'll go with that one.
Okay, because, oh boy.
Alright, here we go. Yeah! Yeah, so anyway, that being said, guys, I'm gonna hop out of here. Gonna call it a day. Well, I'm not calling it a day because when my roommate gets back, we're gonna finish out Oni, and that'll be around 8:30, 8:45ish when she gets back home. No, it's just the end of the stream for now. I will be back, and all you headphones users, be prepared. There'll be more screams ahead. So just prepare yourself. I've already set it to where like my microphone will be lower than what is supposed to be called for, I guess you could say. But I'm excited because we're almost done with the game. I know where we are in the game, like as far as like from what I remember, we're really, really close to the end. So we just have a few more things we have to do, and then we'll be able to wrap up the game. So I'm really excited. I'm so glad for those of you who were able to come and enjoy the stream and have a good time. Thank you for stopping by to read scary stories with me. I'm excited to see you all again in a few hours. And in the meantime, just thanks again for stopping by. It really means a lot to me for you guys to just come in and like chill and hang out with me. This is really relaxing for me, especially after having a really long week of just stress and work. Just a heads up, I'll say this again in the stream later on tonight. I will be going on vacation on Thursday. I'll try to squeeze a stream in during the weekend. It'll be really, really hard considering that I'll probably just have like my crappy ass laptop, my little mini that I'll take with me. So I won't be able to like do anything for too long. Otherwise, I'll just update you guys on Twitter and let you all know what's going on. But I'll be back on vacation not this coming Tuesday, but I'll be gone on vacation on Thursday. I'll be back the following Tuesday. And then I'll be able to stream either that Tuesday night or Wednesday, because I took Wednesday off from work. So I won't actually be going back to work till Thursday. So just to have a day to kind of relax. And even if I don't stream, I'll definitely have a video up and ready to go sometime next week for you all. I've been in the process of editing it and putting it all together. So that'll be a thing. So I'm excited. I cannot wait. And to hang out with you guys again in a few hours. But I need to go eat, Because as you all know, a hungry Eden is not a good Eden. It's a sad Eden, hangry Eden, and we don't want hangry Eden. So yeah, with that being said, thank you all for stopping by. Tommy, thanks for chilling with me.
No problem.
And yeah, so until next time, bye.
See you later, guys.